Okay, Canto 10, Chapter 2, verse 23. Iti ghoratamad bhavat sa nivrita svayam prabhu aste pratikshamas tajma hardir vairanubhadrakrit. Translation. Shukadev Goswami said, deliberating in this way, Kamsa, although determined to continue in enmity toward the Supreme Personality of Godhead, refrained from the vicious killing of his sister. He decided to wait until the Lord was born and then do what was needed. This verse does not have a purport, so we're going to continue. 10:24. Asina samvisamstishtan bhujana paryatam mahim Chintanyo Rishikesham Apsyatan Mayam Jagat. Translation. While sitting on his throne or in his sitting room, while lying on his bed, or indeed while situated anywhere, and while eating, sleeping, or walking, Kamsa saw only his enemy, the Supreme Lord Rishikesha. In other words, by thinking of his all-pervading enemy, Kamsa became unfavorably Krishna conscious. Purport by Srila Prabhupada's Divine Grace. Srila Rupa Goswami has described the finest pattern of devotional service as Anukulyana Krishnanusshilana, or cultivating Krishna consciousness favorably. Kamsa, of course, was also Krishna conscious, but because he regarded Krishna as his enemy, even though he was fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, his Krishna consciousness was not favorable for his existence. Krishna consciousness, favorably cultivated, makes one completely happy, so much so that a Krishna conscious person does not consider Kaivalya Sukham, or merging into the existence of Krishna, to be a great gain. Merging into the existence of Krishna to be a great gain. Kaivalyam narakayate. For a Krishna conscious person, even merging into the existence of Krishna or Brahman, as impersonalists aspire to do, is unfavorable. Kaivalyam narakayate tridashapur akasha pushpayate. Karmis hankered to be materialistic people, hankered to be promoted to the heavenly planets, but a Krishna conscious person considers such promotion a will of the wisp, good for nothing. Big deal, heavenly planets. Durdantendriya kala sarpa patali protkala damstraya yate. Yogis try to control their senses and thus become happy. But a Krishna conscious person neglects the methods of yoga. Interesting. He is unconcerned with the greatest of enemies, the senses, which are compared to snakes. For a Krishna conscious person who is cultivating Krishna consciousness favorably, the happiness conceived by the karmis, jnanis, and yogis is treated as less than a fig. Kamsa, however, became, because of cultivating Krishna consciousness in a different way, that is, inimically, was uncomfortable in all the affairs of his life. Whether sitting, sleeping, walking, or eating, he was always in danger. This is the difference between a devotee and a non-devotee. A non-devotee or atheist also cultivates God consciousness by trying to avoid God in everything. For example, so-called scientists who want to create life by a combination of chemicals regard the external material elements as supreme. So they regard something as supreme. Such scientists do not like the idea that life is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, as clearly stated in Bhagavad Gita. Mamai Vamsho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta. In the living entities do not arise from a combination of material elements such as earth, water, air, and fire, but are separated portions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If one can understand the position of the living entity as a separated portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by studying the nature of the living entity, one can understand the nature of the Supreme Godhead. Since the living entity is the fragmental sample of the Godhead. But because atheists are not interested in God consciousness, they try to be happy by cultivating Krishna consciousness in various unfavorable ways. Everyone is following my path in all respects. That's the verse that reminds us. Although Kamsa was always absorbed in thoughts of Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he was not happy. A devotee, however, whether sitting on a throne or beneath a tree, is always happy. Srila Rupa Goswami resigned from the office as a government minister to sit beneath a tree, yet he was happy. Tyaktva turinam ashesha mandalapati shrinim sada tuchavahat. Sad Goswami Ashtaka 4. He did not care for his comfortable position as minister. He was happy even beneath a tree in Vrindavana, favorably serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the difference between a devotee and a non-devotee. A non-devotee, for a non-devotee, the world is full of problems, whereas for devotee, the entire world is full of happiness. Vishvam Purna Sukhayate Vidi Mahendrarishcha Kityate Yat Karunya Kataksha Vaibhavatam Tam Gaurameva Stumaha. Chaitanya Charitamrita 95. Chaitanya Chandramrita 95. This comfortable position of a devotee can be established by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yasmin sthito na dukkena guru napi vichalyate. Bhagavad Gita 6:22. Even when a devotee is superficially put into great difficulty, he's never disturbed. He's never
Nanda Bihari
disturbed.
Prabhu and Chaitanya Charan is here.
Great. Okay. Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, good morning. Thank you so much for
Hare
coming.
Krishna. Very sorry, there was some confusion because of the time zone change, or the daylight savings basically. I thought the class is after 1 more hour.
That's all right. That's all right. We're not disturbed. We're aspiring to be devotees and we're never disturbed.
Thank you.
Whether we're getting late or not. Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, it's our great honor to have you. Chaitanya Charan Prabhu is a real scientist. He regards Krishna as a supreme, not matter. Right, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu?
Yes. Thank you, Prabhu. So,
Okay.
should I read
And-
the
and-
purport, or have you read it already? Or
We did the verse in the purport. It's just 3 things that we asked our speakers to consider. We want to stop at 7:45. I can raise my hand when it's time to stop for
sure,
Q&A.
perfect.
And then we may have some new people in attendance, so we want to keep it. Please break points down for people whose understanding is very basic, like myself. And the third point is, if you want to give a recap, keep it brief, because we've been on this pastime for a few weeks
Okay.
already. All right? Thank you.
Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanishalaakaya Chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity today to speak on the Bhagavatam with all of you. And we are in the 10th canto, the text 23 and 24. The 23rd text was describing how iti ghoratamad bhavat sanivrittah swayam prabhu aste pratikshamas tajjanma harer vairanu. So iti ghoratamad bhavat. In this way, with a very ghastly mentality, ghoratamad. In English, we have good, better, and best. These are superlatives. So ghora, ghoratara, and ghoratama. So it's bad, worse, and worst. In this way, he had the most reprehensible mentality. Sanivrittah swayam prabhu. In this way, his consciousness was covered. His understanding was completely distorted. Aste pratiksham tajjanma. In this way, tajjanma, the birth of that person who was prophesied to be the cause of his death, pratikshamas. He started expecting, he started waiting. Harer vaira anubandhakrit. Hari, that Supreme Lord Hari, vaira anubandha. So vaira means enemy. Anubandha means in that was the way he was connected with him. Krit, he was bound. His actions were binding him to the Lord in a relationship of enmity. Oh, this is my enemy who's going to come to kill me. How will I deal with him? And then the next verse where there is a purport is Asina samvisham stishtan bhunjana paryatan mahim chintayano rishikesham apashyat tanmayam jagat. So asina, when he was sitting, samvishams, when he was lying down or relaxing, tishtan, when he was doing anything else for that matter, samvishams tishtan, when he was situated, bhunjana, when he was taking food, paryatan, when he was walking about, mahim means earth, he was just strolling or going for a walk, chintayano rishikesham, he was contemplating on the Lord, apashyat tanmayam jagat. In this way, he saw the whole universe filled with the Lord. Tanmayam. Tanmayam means by him, Maya is filled. So this is he saw the whole universe filled with the Lord Rishikesh or Lord Krishna. So what is going on over here? This is describing the consciousness of the demon Kamsa, who has heard that, oh, I'm going to be killed by Vishnu. And I'm going to be killed by Vishnu, so what should I do about it? So he thinks that I have to be ready for it. But how can I be ready? Well, the way to be ready is to see when is he going to come, where is he going to come. So he's constantly thinking about him. So this is a remarkable level of subtlety or sophistication within one's consciousness or within the analysis of consciousness as described in the Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada started this movement and he called it the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So Krishna consciousness, our purpose is to be conscious of Krishna. And yes, that is very important. At the same time, no, there is something, in one sense, when you talk about consciousness, that is itself internal. It is not just about Krishna activities. Okay. So when it is, okay, are you doing this? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? It is not about externals. It is about internals. But then there is a further level of sophistication here. Even when we are analyzing internals, there could be different levels of internals that we could analyze. So what does that mean? That not only what we are doing is important, what we are thinking is even more important. But you could say that why we are thinking what we are thinking is even more important. So this is a third level of sophistication which we are discussing over here. Why? So the broad theme which I'll be discussing today is why motivation matters in spirituality. So generally we talk about spirituality is a matter of consciousness. And yes, definitely it's a matter of consciousness. But somebody may even be conscious of Krishna. But why is that person conscious of Krishna? That is very important. So here Kamsa is thinking about Krishna. But what is his reason for thinking about Krishna? It is not out of affection. It is not out of devotion. It is not out of a desire to devote himself to Krishna at all. None of those desires are there for him. He's thinking about Krishna simply because he wants to, he thinks of Krishna as an enemy and he thinks, I have to kill Krishna. So that is not at all considered a very auspicious thing. So thinking about Krishna is auspicious, but how much deeper are we going into spirituality? What are we thinking about? And why are we thinking about? So we could say that I'm using a PowerPoint as a whiteboard and I'll type some things as we discuss. So if you want to go deeper into spirituality, we say, what are we doing? That's one thing. That's our action. Then what are we thinking about? That's a deeper level. And then why are we thinking about the things we are thinking about? So this is even deeper. So we could say this is at the level of actions. This is at the level of thoughts. And this is at the level of motivations. So generally, when we talk about consciousness, we usually think about it in terms of thoughts. Okay, what are you thinking about? But consciousness includes both what we are thinking about and why we are thinking about. So somebody may come to Krishna, say for example, if say a temple is having it's an opulent temple, so maybe there are a lot of wealthy things in the temple, lot of expensive things in the temple. A thief may come to a temple and they may remember everything. Okay, that is the place where the jewelry is kept. That is the place where the accounts is there. This painting looks very expensive. This is mediocre. Actually, that thief may come to a temple and the thief may more carefully observe everything in the temple than what a devotee may also observe. So in one sense, they may even observe on the altar, okay, what is worth stealing, if somebody is thinking like that. But is that Krishna consciousness? Well, yes and no. Why yes and no? Because if you want to consider Krishna consciousness, it's about both things. It's about our contemplations and our motivations for those contemplations. So contemplation is what you're thinking steadily, not just what you think about occasionally, but another is motivation for the contemplation. So here we see that Kamsa has the contemplation. He's thinking about Krishna, but Vairanubandhakrit. He's thinking of Krishna as an enemy. And that is not considered conducive for a devotional relationship. Now that raises a question, is it bad? Is it good? Well, in one sense, thinking about Krishna is good. Say, now we may say that, this person is a robber, they'll go and rob anywhere. So if they're coming to a temple, they're remembering Krishna, isn't that good? Well, yes, in the ultimate sense, it is good. But if after that they are going to rob from a temple, that is not good. So good and bad, maybe they rob from some other place. Actually, no robbing is good, but robbing from God directly is quite reprehensible. So we could say that what is good and what is bad, we have to look from different perspectives. So from the immediate perspective, Kamsa is acting as the enemy of Krishna. And in that sense, that is not at all good. That is bad. So what happens is, ideally speaking, what we want is, if there is, see, when we talk about motivation, there are multiple words, but motivation is often related with emotion. When I have motivation for something, then I have emotion associated with it. Otherwise, there is not much emotion in it. So contemplation can be very, we could say, dry or unemotional. It can be. We don't want dry, unemotional kind of contemplation. We want contemplation which is permeated with emotion. So if suppose somebody is suppose somebody wants to be Krishna conscious, or somebody wants to be spiritually conscious. So what we would like ideally is that there is a blend of the spiritual, the motivation, and the motivation and the contemplation. Both are there. So we could say broadly, are you able to see my screen right now? Okay, sorry, I don't know what happened. Suddenly it stopped. Let me see if I can fix this. So there is the motivation for being Krishna conscious, and there is the intention of being Krishna conscious, or rather there's the contemplation. So if we ask, what is Krishna consciousness? There's a lot in it. Prabhupada says that it is to think about Krishna with a desire to be with him. So it is motivation plus contemplation. Both have to come in. If it's only one, that's not the most animated way of being Krishna conscious. So how do we get both of these together? So if you consider a pendulum, so if there is motivation, now is it possible that there is motivation? The motivation is there. That means there is emotion. Generally, as I said, whenever there's motivation, there is emotion over there. If I'm highly motivated, then there's a lot of emotion in something. It may be anything. If somebody is watching a sports match, they're watching baseball. Then if they want a particular team to win, then their emotion involved is much more in that. Oh, okay, this score was made, that score was not made. There's a lot of emotion involved in it. On the other hand, when you talk about contemplation, that is associated more with, we could say, cognition. It is information. I contemplate on it. I contemplate on the mountain. I contemplate on a river. I contemplate on God. So what we want is a balance of motivation and contemplation. So we want the emotional aspect and we want the intellectual aspect. So what are the emotions driving me? Why am I doing what am I doing? And then do I know what is the importance of what I'm doing? So we want to think about Krishna, but what is our motivation for thinking about Krishna? If Kamsa is thinking Krishna is my enemy and I want to destroy him, then he really doesn't know Krishna. He doesn't know who Krishna really is. So cognition here means one should know Krishna properly with one's intelligence. And that is where the philosophy comes in. The philosophy helps us understand that Krishna is our greatest well-wisher. Once we understand that Krishna is our well-wisher, so then what happens is, then naturally the emotions become positive. So we can say Krishna is our benefactor. Once we understand the Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam, then that is what, when we study the philosophy, that should be the result. And on the other hand, With respect to emotion, it is, you understand that Krishna is the source of all pleasure. He is Ram, Ramati, Ramayati, one who delights and one who gives delight. So we could say broadly, when these two things we understand, that okay, by contemplation I may understand Krishna is the source of, Krishna is benefactor, he wants good for me. But still, there are many things which we know are good for us, but we may not really be attracted to them. Say eating broccoli is good for us, but well, that's not the most attractive food to eat. So with respect to Krishna, on one side we want to be intellectually convinced that he is the ultimate reality. Connecting with him is the best for us. But on the other side, it's not just that he is the ultimate reality. He is also the ultimately attractive reality. He's not just our benefactor, he's also attractive. Connecting with him is not just good for us, it will also make us feel good in the long run. Maybe not immediately, but in the long run. So when we understand this, what happens is we understand that connecting with him is not just good for us. It will also make us feel good. Feel good, not in a temporary sense, in the long run. Eternally, it will make us feel good because we'll become purified. We'll become restored to our pure spirituality, our pure state of eternal spiritual virtue. So in that sense, for Kamsa, what is happening is his motivation is off because his cognition is also off. He's thinking about Krishna, but he's not thinking with knowledge, with understanding. And that is where the problem is coming up. And that is something which has to be addressed. So what happens? We will see in the future how Kamsa will send many demons and will try to kill Krishna. And eventually, Kamsa will have to meet with his fate. He will have to meet the consequences of his misdeeds. But the key point is that he exemplifies this thinking about God, but not thinking about God in a favorable way. So that is also good, but that is not the best way to do it. That is not the way the devotee wants to think about the Lord. So I'll make one more point and then I'll summarize and we can have some questions. That the Bhagavatam has one very distinctive description that the ultimate purpose of life is liberation. Why liberation? Because we are limited by the many circumstances that we face in life. We are at the very basic level, we are limited by our lifespan. So now life's ultimate purpose from the Bhagavatam's perspective is liberation. Now if you see, in the West, the word liberation is not as common as the word liberty. Now, there's the Statue of Liberty in America, one of the most celebrated icons. And generally the word liberty we associate with freedom. Now, of course, what it means is nobody else should control us. We should have our free will. The current war between Russia and Ukraine is positioned as a war for the protection of democracy. And then that triggers people's emotions. Yes, we should support. So liberty is something which liberty, freedom, independence, democracy, these are words which captivate our contemporary mind. Now, in the spiritual traditions of India, the understanding is, yes, that there could be a state of bondage and there could be a state of subordination, there could be a state of freedom, but eventually everyone is bound. Even the head of state, even an absolute autocrat, a tyrant is bound. How? See, everyone is bound by time. Time means what? Everyone has to grow old, everyone has to get deceased, everyone has to die. So that takes us to aging and death. But that's not the only thing. See, we are also bound by conditions. And that is why one of the words used for souls in this world is conditioned soul. So conditioned soul means what? The soul's happiness, even the soul's very existence depends on so many conditions. If the temperature drops too much, we won't be able to survive. We as souls are not going to be destroyed, but our bodies won't survive. Or for that matter, if you are put in a situation where we don't have enough food, enough water, we won't be able to survive. So there are so many conditions that we need for our survival. And we could say these are basic conditions for our survival. So for our survival and for our pleasure also. So depending on who we are, in what situation we are in, say if we consider an extreme example of somebody who's addicted, then for that person, without the substance that they are addicted to, they just can't survive. Just they feel I will die without it. They will not physically die, but they feel like that. They're very, very dependent on those conditions. Now we may not be addicted to substances, but we all have what we can say are attachments. And when something we are attached to is made unavailable to us, is taken away from us, then we suffer. We're going to go great distress. So if somebody says that, no, I'm not in distress, I'm happy. Well, good. You can be relatively happier than others. That's nice. Nobody wants anyone to be miserable. But basically, if you want to understand distress, in a broad sense, we can say to not get what we want and to get what we don't want. Yasmat priya priya viyoga sanyoga janma. Prahlad says that to not get means to be separated from. That is called as viyog. The word yoga is often associated with physical postures. That's just that's just one meaning of the word yoga. But yoga means connection. So, and viyoga means disconnection. So to not get what we want, so that which is priya, that which is desirable for us, we don't get it. We get separated from it. And to get, that means yoga. Yasmat priya priya viyoga sanyoga janma. To get what we to get what we don't want, what is apriya. That means, say, if we are traveling from place A to place B, we are going by a flight, and we want the window seat, and no window seat is available. Well, that's an annoyance. It may not be a catastrophe, but it's an annoyance. So we don't get what we want. Maybe we are going to office, and we are going for work, and we don't want a traffic situation, but there's a traffic. The traffic is very high, and we get delayed. That's something which we don't want. We get it. Now sometimes maybe we are in a party or somewhere, we are get together, and everybody's sitting for dinner, and there's one person we don't like in the party, and our seating arrangement is we sit right next to that person. So what happens is, so many times we get what we don't want. Or maybe we want to meet some person, and that's the reason why we have gone to that party, and that person doesn't turn up over there. So we don't get what we want. So there are so many ways in which in life we are put in situations where we don't get what we want. So why am I discussing all this? The point is, distress in the world is unavoidable. So we are bound by time, we are bound by conditions. So what happens is, the ultimate purpose of life is considered to be liberation, not just liberty in this world. Liberty in this world is important. We don't want anybody politically dominating over us. But more important than that is to have spiritual freedom, to not be bound to external conditions. We are spiritual beings, so space and time. So space and time should not constrain us. That is the ultimate purpose of life. And what the Bhagavatam says is, if we remember Krishna steadily, if we become attached to Krishna, then we all will move toward liberation. So the key to liberation, what is it? It is, if we consider from one perspective, It is to become attached to the unlimited. So key to liberation from the limited. Our lifespan is limited, our situations limit us, our bodily abilities limit us. So the key to liberation is attachment to the unlimited. The more we become attached to the Lord, the more we become freed from the domain of the limited. So if my happiness is not coming from my physical situation, it is coming from my internal connection, then whatever happens, I won't be so disturbed. So what do we do? If we can connect with the Lord, then that inner connection, it frees us from dependence on outer situations. And that is considered to be one of the characteristics of liberation. We become free. It's too hot, it's too cold, we are pleasant people, we are unpleasant people, we are being respected, we are not being respected. Okay, yeah, those things we are aware of them, but they don't dominate our consciousness because we have found inner fulfillment, we have found inner satisfaction, inner connection with Krishna. So now, what the Bhagavatam says is the normal way to become liberated is to actually become devoted to Krishna. So when we become devoted to him, when he becomes more dear to us than anything else in the world, then he takes us out of the world. So that's when can one become liberated from the world? Now the key is, by key I mean the pathway. And then I found it's a qualification. The qualification for liberation from the world is what? That when our desire for God becomes greater than our desire for anything in this world, then God has no reason to keep us any longer in this world. It is as long as we desire things, oh, I want a better home, I want a better partner, I want a better position, I want greater respect. When we have the thing, I want a better car, I want a better phone, whatever it is. As long as we have desire for things in this world, those desires keep us here. But now, even if we don't get rid of all those desires, at least our desire for Krishna becomes greater than all those desires, then we attain Krishna. And Krishna has no reason to keep us in this world. We come out of the world and we attain him. So this is the normal way to attain liberation. But, and this is not only normal, this is the recommended way. But Krishna is so merciful that even for somebody like Kamsa, who thinks about him negatively, Krishna will liberate even such a person. That is mercy. He just sees, oh, you're thinking about me, and I'm happy that you're thinking about me. You could be thinking about so many things, you're thinking about me. Now, it's so, in one sense, amazing that actually Kamsa will be thinking about Krishna for the purpose of destroying Krishna. But what is Krishna doing? Krishna will reciprocate by destroying Kamsa's material existence, by ending Kamsa's material bondage. So that is Krishna's extraordinary mercy. So that's why it is, so this is, let's put it this way, Krishna's, this is extraordinary mercy. Now just because it's extraordinary, that doesn't mean it is desirable. It's not that we seek to this way, we seek to act in this way, that though Kamsa thinks about Krishna for destroying him. Oh, where will Krishna be? Where can I find him? How can I destroy him? Krishna reciprocates by destroying his material existence. That means by liberating him. So why is so Krishna merciful over here? Because Krishna focuses on his contemplation more than his intention, than his motivation. That is the meaning of Krishna being, Krishna is called as Bhavagrahi. He's the essence seeker. He's the essence seeker. So he sees, in Sanskrit it's called as bhavagrahi. He sees the motivation, he sees the heart, he sees the consciousness. And there is something good in the consciousness. You say the bhav is bad over here. Okay, the motivation is bad, but there's something good. So Krishna sees the small thing that is good and he appreciates that. So the Bhagavatam's focus is that if Krishna can elevate and liberate even somebody who thinks about it in a hostile mood, then if somebody thinks about him in a devotional mood, somebody thinks about him in a mood of love and service, then why would Krishna not liberate such a person? Krishna will surely liberate him. So the exceptional examples in the Bhagavatam. So this is, as I said, exceptional example. Kamsa getting liberated. The exceptional, or you can say extreme examples. Sometimes the word extreme has a negative connotation, like extremism, but it's extreme in the sense that this is not the normal way to it. So the Bhagavatams, the extreme examples are not meant to normalize the extreme. This is not the recommended way the Bhagavatam says. So we know the Bhagavatam is being spoken to a king who is about to die, Parikshit. Now he is not told, oh, you start thinking of Krishna as your enemy. No, it is not meant to normalize the extreme. It is rather meant to increase our faith in the normal process. So normal process means what? Oh, we just chant Hare Krishna every day, we hear the Bhagavatam class, we read about Krishna. We think, what is all this going to do? It seems so ordinary. Am I doing anything special? No, it may not seem like special, but it is very special. So it is not meant to normalize the standard, not normalize the extreme, but rather it is, or you could say not normalize, it is, let's use the word, standardize the extreme. The standard process that is there, which we are all trying to follow, the standard process, it is meant to increase our faith in that, increase our inspiration to follow this process. So if Krishna can elevate and liberate somebody who is thinking about him as an enemy, and if somebody thinks of him as a Lord, then that why will not he liberate somebody who thinks about him in the mood of a devotee? He will definitely do that. And that is Krishna's supreme mercifulness. So I'll summarize what we discussed today, and then we can have a few questions. I talked about 4 main points. First point, I started by talking about how Kamsa is thinking about Krishna, but when we want to go deeper into spiritual life, it's first we look at what a person is doing, then we look at what a person is thinking, but then deepest means we go, why are they thinking what they're thinking? So there is action, then there is contemplation, and then there is motivation. So the Bhagavatam is going at a very deeper level. So Krishna consciousness means it's an integration of both motivation and contemplation. Motivation helps us to activate our emotional faculty. When we are highly motivated, then our emotions are engaged over there. And the contemplation is associated with our cognitive faculty, where we connect with Krishna, understanding who he is. So when the cognitive contemplative faculty is positively engaged, then we understand that Krishna is our greatest well-wisher. That connecting with Krishna is good for me. And when the motivation is positively engaged, then we understand connecting with Krishna is not just good, but it feels good. It feels great. And that combination is the most potent way to move ahead in our bhakti. And then we talked about liberation, that Krishna consciousness is the ultimate way to become liberated. We are all limited. We may not be politically restricted, but we are restricted by time, we are restricted by conditions. And more important than political liberty is spiritual liberation. So there's no standard way to get spiritual liberation is to become attached to the unlimited more than anything limited in the world. But the exceptional example of Kamsa over here is that although he has no attachment to Krishna, but Krishna is so compassionate that just he's thinking about me. Seeing that, Krishna liberates him. And this is not meant to standardize that way of contemplating on Krishna, but to inspire us toward the standard process of connecting with Krishna in a mood of bhakti. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. So I'm looking at the comments. Yes. Yeah, that conditioned soul explanation is quite illuminating. Even when I had heard it for the first time about 10 years ago, 15, 16 years ago, I was quite illuminated. Now, connecting with the unlimited helps us grow. There's a verse in the 7th canto. Dvesha, how do you start? Yeah, bhayat kamso dvesha chaidyadaya gopya kamat bhayat kamso dvesha chaidyadaya rupa. So that is the verse which I had in mind over here. Gopya kamat bhayat kamso. That is 7:131. That's the verse. Which so any way one connects with the unlimited, that will liberate one. Was that what you are looking for? Yes. Are there any other points for reflection, discussion? Yes, Rohi.
Not sure I can speak unless somebody adjusts the sound.
Yes. Can you speak now? Sorry, you're not unmuted. Yeah, now.
Just a second. Hare Krishna, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
It's wonderful how you're speaking about the spectrum. Some ways of thinking of Krishna are better than others, and how that makes us feel good, and how it's liberating, and we become detached from, very good point, detached from the external conditions. An interesting concept is that what makes it better is that if we're doing something to please Krishna, if we're showing love, then Krishna is more pleased by that because he knows that's good for us, Last night we had an interesting, Krishna, you're glorifying how merciful Krishna is to offer this access even to people who may not have the best motivation. Last night we had a conversation with a gentleman, I'll say gentleman, and he was quite inimical. He even was saying, there is no Krishna, right out. And I was thinking how wonderful is Krishna, that even though he's saying there is no Krishna, he's saying Krishna. So then I said to him, what did you say? He said, there is no Krishna. I said, who? Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. So Krishna is so clever that even in the most indirect way, people are benefiting, like Kamsa is benefiting by thinking of Krishna so completely. How wonderful is Krishna?
Yes, so somehow many times people who deny the existence of God, they also are in their own way conscious of God. So in some ways, an atheist is thinking about God, and if they get rational explanations, they may also become theistic. So there is something like what I can say is philosophical atheism, and there's something like psychological or emotional atheism. So if somebody is a philosophical atheist, that means they have not found rational arguments for the existence of God, and maybe they have heard from atheists, and then they've become convinced. Philosophical atheists are actually relatively easier to persuade. But somebody who's a psychological atheist, that means that person has had bitter experiences with religious people, or that person has seen maybe they've seen stark examples of human suffering and depravity. And it's not so much a logical conclusion as more emotional. How can God exist? Then for such people, arguments, even not argument in the sense of being argumentative, but intellectual persuasion doesn't help so much. Maybe they just need to have many more positive interactions with devotees, and gradually they may become more open. But till that time, as you suggested, just getting them to chant Krishna's names, that also is is subconsciously working to increase their spiritual credits and help them come closer to Krishna eventually. Thank you for sharing that. Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare
Thank you
Krishna.
thank you so much for class. I
Hare Krishna.
was just reflecting how much I loved your point about Kamsa being envious of Krishna because he doesn't really know Krishna. And it was making me think of, is that's the same true if we're envious of people. We don't really see the Krishna in them. We're looking at it with selfish motivation. So that was such a great, wonderful point, because enviousness is so insidious and so horrible that to really see it in that way, I felt very helpful. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. That's a very good point. See, what happens is, generally, whenever we have some negative emotion towards some, it could be envy, it could be anger, it could even be lust or whatever. Whatever happens in those situations is that we are reducing that person to one particular attribute of theirs. So maybe I'm envious of this person because I may feel that I work so hard, but nobody appreciates me. And this person doesn't do anything and everybody praises them. So now, even if that is true, even if that is happening like that, what are we doing is we are reducing the person to the praise that they are receiving. But if we connect with the humanity of the person, if we can connect with the spirituality, that is wonderful. Spirituality means, as you said, we see them as souls, as parts of Krishna, that's wonderful. But even if we just connect with the humanity of the person, means, try to understand them as a person. He says, okay, they are getting this praise and maybe they don't deserve it. That's one part of it, but that doesn't define their life, who they are. So generally, when we get to know people, then quite often the reductionistic labels that we apply to them, that we realize, hey, this is not really applicable. And it's not always that will happen, because sometimes we get to know people in a way that we can reinforce that label about them. Then that doesn't help. That means if I'm wanting to know, if I'm envious of someone and I'm wanting to know all the details about that person by which my envy will increase for them, then that means all I want to know is how undeserving this person is for all the praise that they're getting. That will not decrease my envy. But if we try to understand them as a person, as a conscious being, then to a large extent, what happens is that the relationship becomes more multidimensional. And that's how it is in normal relationships also. Say if there is a male-female attraction as a basis of a long-term relationship, and they're going to have a dharmic union, they're going to get married, then initially the attraction may be based on desire. It could be physical desire also. But as the couple gets to know each other more and more, then yes, that desire may be a part of the relationship, maybe an important part also. But that doesn't define the relationship. We start understanding each other more and more. And so basically getting to know each other, seeing the humanity and the spirituality of others, helps us make the relationship more multidimensional. And Angela's made one comment that the gopis were attracted by the lusty desires. So I would like to clarify that quickly. There are two things over there. One is that there are the word lust. When the word kam is used, the Sanskrit word kam has many different meanings in Sanskrit itself. It's sometimes translated as lust. Generally we think of, especially on the spiritual path, we think of lust as undesirable. And then we may say, how could the gopis who are pure devotees have lust? So what is explained is that among the gopis are Krishna, they are the cowherd maidens, the cowherd girls in Krishna's pastoral paradise of Vrindavan. Now, not all of them were pure devotees. Some of them were seekers who, by some level of spirituality, they had been born in the vicinity of Vrindavan. So when they saw Krishna, their attraction might have been material for them. So Radharani's attraction for Krishna is not kama. The intimate gopis who are who are parts of Krishna's associates in the spiritual world, that is not the sexual desire of lust. That is a pure transcendental desire. But there were some who were attracted to Krishna because he was just, his form was so attractive. But even they became purified. So this does not refer to all the gopis. This refers to specifically those categories of gopis who were not yet purified, but they happened to be in Krishna Lila, and their attraction purified them. Okay. There's one last question. Yes, Julie.
Good morning, Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you so
Krishna.
much. Can you please clarify? I really enjoyed this talk because I feel like I can identify in my own life different, like when I'm on different points of that spectrum between motivation and contemplation. Can you please clarify, is our practice to come to the center with the two, is that our sadhana and our association with other devotees? Is it just acknowledging, being able to acknowledge when we're on one end or the other and like trying to scale it to center? Can you just make that clarification?
Oh, okay. It's a good question. Thank you. So how do we have a healthy blend of both motivation and contemplation? So the intellectual and the emotional aspects, we can say. In the Bhagavad Gita, several times, Krishna says, Mai arpit mano buddhir mam evaishyasya samshayah. In 8.7, I think again in the 12th chapter, I think 12.18, he says that, Mai arpit, offer to me. Arpit is to offer, mana buddhi. Mana is our emotional side, broadly speaking. Buddhi is our rational intellectual side. And in this way, when you offer your mind and intelligence to me, you will come to me. Mam evaishyasya asamshayah. Certainly you will come to me. So now for all of us, so what that means, what Krishna is again saying is that our inner world, see, we have our physical life and the physical world. Krishna is saying more important than that is to offer our inner world, our thoughts, our mind and our intelligence to him. Now, each of us has a particular nature. Maybe some of us may be more rational, some of us may be more emotional. So is it that an emotional person has to become more rational, or a rational person has to become more emotional? Well, that's not the key thing. The key thing is somebody may have their inner world where, say, they are defined 70% by their rationality and 30% by their emotionality. Somebody else maybe they will define 70% by their emotionality and 30% by their rationality. Now, when I say defined by, means primarily that's how they react, that they respond to situations. It's not necessarily a bad thing or a good thing. That's the way they are. But the point is, the way we are, we offer our inner world to Krishna. And overall, is it that we have to have an ideal 50-50% balance? No, it's not like that. As we are, in one sense, we offer ourselves to Krishna. So we try to connect emotionally also, we try to connect rationally also. So for some of us, if we are more emotional, then maybe there are certain aspects of bhakti which may be more attracted to. So when we associate with devotees, maybe the way devotees greet each other, the cordiality, the warmth, the sense of belonging, that's what draws us. And that's what we look forward to. That's wonderful. Anyway, connect with Krishna, that is good. But simultaneously, even if we don't feel that attracted to classes, we hear the classes. We hear them and try to understand. That may not be our primary inspiration, but still we hear. And conversely, if philosophy is what attracts us, and socializing, this is just a boredom. No, but try to be cordial, try to be friendly with devotees. So try to engage in all aspects of bhakti, even if we are attracted particularly to some aspects of bhakti. So that way we'll be able to offer our mind and intelligence both. Does that answer your question? No? Thank you very much. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Chaitanya Charan Prabhu ki jai. Thank you very much. Beautiful talk. Chaitanya Charan Prabhu can handle this 30-50% questions. What's the correlation between emotions? He's the one. He's the one. So thank you very much, Prabhus.
Happy to be of service, bro. Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. I have a question for, where is Shikshashtakam Prabhu? Is he still here? Okay. Because he's got Devananda Pandit Prabhu with him, and he's a musician. And I wanted to hear his reflection of the emotional side of bhakti, because his songs are great. Check it out. It's just so wonderful. And he's also, to write up a song, it takes intellect, right, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu? Do you write songs? No?
Well, that's one of my dreams someday.
Okay. Right. Yeah, anyways, thank you very much. Everybody have a wonderful day. Offer your inner world to Krishna. Chaitanya Charan Prabhu is encouraging us, and you will be happy. Devotees are happy. Non-devotees are always in anxiety. So, Akiko-chan, Andrea, Angel, Hemangi, where is your background? Rajarani, Arjuna Prabhu, Henry, Susan, Richa, Henry Prabhu, Hare Krishna, beautiful smile. Okay, who else is here? Andrea, Bhima Prabhu, wow, I like your toy. Rake. Yeah, he's cleaning up our anarthas. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. I have to tune out. Hare Bol.
Hare. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Happy